got it.
Thank you, sir. Now you can proceed.
Thank you. Today, we are going to discuss a very important issue on the rights of the marginalized population of India who have been suffering from deprivation, denial, subjugation, exploitation in whatever it likes. When I'm trying to speak on this issue, an idea that clicks in my mind that after the long independence war, we fought against the British imperialism. The Constituent Assembly, constituted of the learned people of the country, they have studied the constitutions of most of the countries, and all the ideals have been brought into and drafted the Constitution of India. The Constitution starts with the preamble. That means immediately after the British saga, we have, the people of India have assumed the sovereignty, and we have agreed upon that the structure of the state will be sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. And another significant and important idea is that this constitution on 26th of November, we the people have given to ourselves the constitution in the form that we have adopted, enacted, and given to ourselves this constitution. That indicates that the political sovereignty is with the people of India, and according to their wish and desire, the constitutional structure, the organs, and also different types of rights are arranged in a very systematic manner in our constitution. The most important thing is that when the constitution was finally brought into operation on 26 January 1950, the constitution has the goal of equality. That means we have admitted ourselves that our social, economic, political, educational situation of different communities belonging to the country are not equal. And that is why our first goal, the first goal is to obtain equality. Now, after more than 70 years of our obtaining independence and also coming into being of the Constitution, if we analyze, then the gap between haves and have-nots are increasing like anything. That is a serious concern. And for that, what are the loopholes in our Constitution or the political will? That is a very serious issue to be dealt with. Normally, superficially, as an academician,
Sir, we cannot hear his voice.
So there is a problem, sir. We're not getting our voice. Jugesh, are you there?
Yes, sir, please connect your audio. His audio is not connected.
Deepan, please make a call to sir.
I will do it. So he will be rejoining again. So due to some technical error, he is converting from this laptop to mobile. So please wait for 2 minutes. And our participants are requested to switch on your video because one observer is here with us, our group. So please be present with your active participation.
So we are still not getting your voice. Oh, yes.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, yes, sir. Yes.
Oh, Sorry for this technical snag. I'm extremely sorry. So can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. I'm extremely sorry because of technical snag.
Okay, so it's a technical issue, sorry. Sir.
Anyway,
So your video is not visible, sir.
oh yes, yes.
Yes, sir. Now it's okay, sir.
It's okay now? Okay, I'll
Yeah,
start.
yeah.
So it's a very burning issue on human rights around the world and in our country. The Constitution of India, which was drafted by the Constituent Assembly, taking into the ideas of different countries, and all the ideas have been incorporated in a harmonious manner for the development of the new democracy in India. And after the British saga that ended with the Indian Independence Act 1947, the drafting committee has taken resort to the objective resolution of 1946. And according to that, the sovereignty, especially the political sovereignty, is assumed by we the people. That is why the preamble starts with, we the people of India having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. That is the structure of the state, and that is the wish of the sovereign, political sovereign, that is the people of India. And as we know, that every citizen, based on the sense of belonging, sense of rationality, and sense of justice, has given to ourselves this constitution by adopting, enacting on 26 November 1946. It based on values, social, economic, political, cultural. These values have been found to be inherent in the Constitution, and that can be possible by interpretation of every clause of the Constitution based on the objective with which the Constitution has been framed. The objective of the Constitution is that preamble introduces this document, which will contain the provisions for the rights of different types, right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to life and personal liberty, right to religion, right to judicial remedies. These are primarily the fundamental rights of the Constitution. But how to avail and enjoy these rights? There are certain devices in the Constitution itself. And to understand that, the triangular coordinated relationship between the fundamental rights, the fundamental duties, though it was brought to the Constitution of India in 1976 on the 42nd Amendment, it was primary. Fundamental duties and fundamental rights must be harmonized. And in addition to that, as we know, that the first goal of our Constitution was the goal of equality. And that is why on 26 January 1950, the targeted time of equalization, social, economic, political, cultural, and all dimensions, that was targeted to be completed within the period of 10 years, 1 decade. But even after 7 decades of the working of the Constitution, we are not in a position to arrive at the goal of equality. There are crises, there are discrepancies, there are discriminations. And that is why this democracy is not healthy today. We have to go down into the root of Indian society, the culture, the heritage of each and every community, which is also well protected by the Constitution itself. If we go to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the right of the people who have their own language, own heritage, own culture, they have got the fundamental right to protect it. And for the protection, the state machinery has to extend logistic support. And the directive principles of state policies, which is the process for taking resort to certain amendments, certain requirements, certain innovations on the basis of needs, requirements, aspiration of the people of the country. Now, Indian Constitution has universal objectives, a sense of universal brotherhood. It speaks over, therefore, that it is also a commitment of fraternity, that is a universal brotherhood, assuring the dignity of the individual. When you talk of individual and also the process of globalization, our Indian Constitution has very candidly incorporated the universal ideas of human rights into its ambit. If we go to Article 14, right to equality and equal protection of the laws, and Article 21, right to life and personal liberties, it is not only available to citizens, it is equally available to aliens as well. That is the significance of human rights and human values. Now, in our society today, if we just make a study of the working of the Constitution for the last 7 decades, we find the gap between haves and have-nots are increasing in such a way that to bridge the gap, there are different crises. There's crises that are not in a position to be resolved. Now, one very important thing is, as a human being, when we're discussing about the human rights and the human values, we must try to understand the law of spirit and the law of matter must have coherence. Now, in the name of advance of science and technology, giving us the material comforts, we just forget about the spiritual element of law of nature. We being the creature of the nation, and we are trying to destroy the social environment, the ecological environment in such a way that ultimately it results into imbalances. The present situation for 1.5 years, the entire human community is facing a disaster. It may be a man-made disaster, it may be a natural disaster, but then ultimately it is the process of destroying the civilization. It is because we are not in a position to think about, realize about the link between the law of spirit and the law of matter. That is a serious issue. We have to look into it. Now, fundamental duties and fundamental rights are balanced harmoniously by the directive principles of state policies. State is, as a welfare state, is entrusted with certain responsibilities of formulating policies, implementing policies, so that the benefit percolates down to the really needy persons. But in certain cases, we find that another syndrome that has been affecting the Indian democracy is corruption. Corruption in mind, corruption in field, corruption everywhere. As a result of which, the goal that is to be achieved and also the plane of equality we have to achieve within 10 years, even after 70 years, we are not in a position to achieve that goal because of the hindrances or the obstructions or the clogs that is created by the most dangerous syndrome of corruption. Everywhere there is corruption. And that becomes a blockade in the process of equalization of all sections of people. Now, we have, as a citizen of the country, we have made pledge to each other, pledge on justice in three fronts: social, economic, political. When we talk of social justice, then Article 38 of the Constitution that provides for providing social justice and also accessibility to justice, irrespective of economic position, caste, creed, whatever that might be. So that is provided by Article 39A of the Constitution, that is the free legal aid. And in context to that, in 1987, the Legal Aid Services Act of 1987 was enacted. And there, Section 12 of the Act provided who are the persons, who are the citizens who are really entitled to the free legal aid to establish their naturally conferred rights as well as legally and constitutionally conferred rights without a single farthing spent from his or her pockets. Now, what is the hindrance? The hindrance is lack of education, lack of information, as a result of which people who are downtrodden, who have a genuine right conferred by law of nature and man-made laws, as because they are totally ignorant of, and the mechanism through which the educative process was to be started, as because it is not sincerely started. For last 70 years, if we observe the social, economic, political situation of the country, then we find that disparity is increasing rather than to decrease. And we have to be very much serious about it. We may go on discussing many other issues, but then unless we take it with a human values, I don't think that there will be a solution to these issues. In most of the cases, the Honorable Supreme Court, it is taking the initiative, or even the judiciary, the judges, the high courts and other judicial courts, they are also trying much to throw their judgments, through their pronouncement, to educate the people by the authorities entrusted with. But in most of the cases, it is found that these mandates are not properly implemented. The executive sincerity, and normally we find, I have with the bitter experience, I have already crossed 60 years. I have seen walking pattern in the bureaucracy. Even if under Article 309, they are called the public servant. I do not generalize. Most of the cases, they feel they reverse term that public are servant to them, and that way they start behaving. I have got a bitter experience from both the sides of the coin, as I was a social worker for last about 40 years, as well as I was also associated with the judicial dispensing process. And my bitter experience, I do not generalize, there are very brilliant people who really feel that they are really for the service of the humanity. Very trivial example I like to draw attention to all the learned participants. Supposing I have a genuine right, genuine claim, and I have to go to a particular authority, say for example, a deputy commissioner. I am so poor and under penury that I cannot manage to buy a pant and a shirt to wear and go. Maximum I can afford is a ganzi and a gamusha to clad. If I go with that dress, because beyond that, it is not possible for me. Even if I'm striving much, I have to maintain my family, but I have a genuine right to approach that authority. If I go there, then in that case, the chowkidar or the peon, he will not allow, or even that magistrate is not allowing me to enter into because I am not with a proper dress. So if I'm forced that you come with a proper dress, wherefrom I will do, I will earn. So that these are the very serious issues we'll have to look into. Otherwise, simply theoretically, we may have consolation in the academic world, we may have consolation in the executive political issues, and that will go in that way. So the seriousness should be there as well. Now, one important thing, why I have chosen this particular word, right to survival. I had the experience of going through the Darwinian theory, survival of the fittest. And in a welfare state, the responsibility as a mother taking care of children is to give that protection to me or protection to each and everybody, so that we will develop the fitness. Fitness doesn't mean I'm not talking only of physical fitness. I'm talking of educational fitness. I'm talking of being a conscious citizen. And that is the role of the mother state. But in practice, most of the efforts are being made, but in the middle of that way, in the process of implementation, as because there is no goodwill for updating that, the crisis is increasing. There is certain technological fascination that we are advancing in science and technology. But then this technology is also creating disaster. Very trivial example I'm talking about. Say, for example, the industrialization. When we open an industry, the Western influence, there is a process, there is a law for treatment. I had the bitter experience of most of the industries, they're releasing these dangerous waste to the water sources, the rivers, and ultimately the river is polluted. Say, for example, on number of cases, just to keep Ganga a clean river, there were batches of cases that were filed in the form of public interest litigation to protect it. But then nobody cares. Unless there is coordination and joining of hands in the process of harmonizing these needs and the grids, then there will be no balance to this. And most of the cases, as we are completely detached from the law of spirit, the sense of morality, sense of belonging, sense of rationality has gone away out of our conduct. And as a result of which, the law of matter dominates our psyche, and as a result, we do not bother about destroying in the philosophy of might is right. And that is what is happening in India. When we are talking about economic opportunities, Article 39 of the Constitution provides for economic opportunity to all sections of people, including the downtrodden. Very recently, the Constitution has been amended, and the Parliament has decided that the reservation policy, which is extended to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, is not sufficient. There are another section whose populations are increasing in a geometrical progression, and they term the economically weaker section. And that is why in Article 15, Clause 6 and Article 16, Clause 6 of the Constitution, in case of public access to and also the public employments, these provisions have been made that at least in all the states, it is not a mandatory provision, it is an enabling provision. If the state feels that in their state, there are a large number of population without any caste, creed, gender-based discrimination, that they are economically weaker section. Then in that case, 10% reservation for them is to be made in case of access to public benefits and also to public employments. And in the state of Assam, a couple of years back, it has been adopted and 10% reservation is made for the economically weaker section. It is not based on caste and creed. It is based on economic sufferings. And on that basis, this has been brought into operation. But in real practice, these important issues we are not attending to, as a result of which this crisis is continuing and the human rights suffers. Now the question is, how will I have a right to live with dignity? Living and surviving are two different components, I personally believe, based on the Darwinian theory. That living means I have a shed to stay, I have clothes to wear, I have got minimum requirement of my food and security. Then only I can think about that if these are there, then I can think about enjoying the right to life with dignity. But I'm not having it. Then in that case, how can I enjoy the right to life with dignity? That is the most important issue. Now, question of not going to the higher stage of right to life, but we are struggling for our survival. So that is why this is, I personally believe that this is a right to survival first, then only right to life will come in. That is my understanding of the issue. I like to draw attention of the learned participants that the world we live in, we may be fascinated with the development of science and technology. I also happen to be a science student, but I'm realizing it from the perspective of spirituality, law of spirit, and reconciling it with the law of matter. That is harmonization between the need and the greed is the need of the time, so that we can have a compassion, we can have sympathy to those people who are really suffering. Not theoretical, but practical cohesions that is necessary. I like to draw attention of learned participants that how the man-made disasters or the development of science and technology that is creating one industrial effluence I have told about. Then in addition to that, now we are moving towards mobile towers. 5G is in the process of coming. Do we realize the damage that is done to the flora and also fauna, including human being? There are studies which establishes that it has a very serious impact even on the human fertility as well as also the fertility of the plants. That is a very serious issue. But we are not taking it in that way. That's because we are concerned only with the specific human rights which are provided in those instruments and documents of the international level and also the national level. And that is our complacency. But then time has come. And I think we, the teachers, will have to take the role of sensitizing. At the experience of studying some of the cases of the radiation effect of the towers on human being and also the fauna and flora. The high power tower, there should be a device for controlling the radiation that is radiated from the tower and affects the environment as well. But then, as because we are fascinated that towers are there, we are getting benefit of mobile phone. We can go anywhere, we can talk, we can enjoy any programs in the YouTube or whatever that might be. That is our complacency. But then that complacency may, I think, be a means for annihilation of our human civilization. Today, for last 1.5 years, we are affected by the COVID-19, the entire human civilization. And in our country, that is damaged, that is done. Especially to those have-nots. My concern is who are struggling for survival. We're quite aware of. Then when the lockdown was started, thousands of people who are migrant laborers from one state to another state in search of livelihood. The crisis that we have faced, we are well experienced with. Secondly, in the case of health and hygiene, Article 47 of the Constitution of India mandates to the state to make certain policies to take care of proper substantial food and proper health medicines. But in this process, what we are facing with in our country, for the last 1.5 years, we have 130 crores or more than that population. How many of us are really vaccinated? Not to speak of second vaccine, second dose, even for the first dose. Lakhs and lakhs of people are really waiting for. There is some lapse in the process, because of which, so lakhs and lakhs of population of our country is really hungering after that when we will be vaccinated, at least by the first dose, so that we can develop the immune system so that we can fight with the disease. So this is the time we have to realize. And if we are not realizing today, then the civilization, human civilization, as a time and again the nature is warning, annihilation is very near to us. Then in our constitution, as we are talking of right to life and personal liberty, in addition to that, right to clean environment, to get more oxygen so that we can breathe into our life and we can sustain. Now you have seen, and we have seen, that the crisis of oxygen last year, because of that, thousands of people had to die because of lack of oxygen. That means we are polluting the environment in such a way that the component of oxygen is lessened in such a way, then other harmful gases are increasing in such a way that to breathe in becomes a serious issue. Say, for example, the city of Mumbai, city of Delhi, and for that matter, the other cities, the crisis of oxygen. That is a very important issue we have to think about. Unless we generate naturally by protecting the plants and protecting the forest, the source of oxygen to us and the receiver of carbon dioxide from us, so that this symbiosis continues. So from that perspective, we'll have to look into all these angles. Now, when we're talking of the concept of human rights, the first word human right was used in the Charter of United Nations of 1945. Immediately after the bitter experience of two of the world wars, especially the Second World War, the skies of war that made the human being to think about that if we are continuing with the mongering of war, then in that case, the civilization will annihilate. And today also we are fascinated in claiming that we are nuclear power. We have got nuclear armaments. I make a question as an ordinary person that a country is having nuclear power, nuclear armaments. In the crisis of oxygen, in the crisis of food, in the crisis of health supporting drugs, and even nuclear bomb is blasted in an area, will there be abundance of oxygen? Will there be abundance of the eatable foods so that human can survive? The fascination towards war and destruction, showing the mightiness that we are also mighty power. That competition among the nations is really dangerous, and that may lead to annihilation of the human civilization. Crisis of water. Many of the renowned personalities who are dealing with the nature, natural resources, and also human habitations, they're really talking about, thinking about, arguing about that water will be the reason for or cause for the third world war. These are very vital issues we have to look into. Now, the Charter of the United Nations, where all the participant member states have resolved that they will try to protect the interests of all sections of people, irrespective of caste, creed, nation, larger or smaller, the human rights. It is not only legal rights, it is human rights. That means we must have human values. In our culture, there is a Sanskrit shloka, Ayam nija parvati ganana lagu setatsam udara saritanam tu vasudeva kutumbakam. It is talking about the human civilization, human rights, human values. Unless we maintain that, then civilization will definitely face a serious threat. Now, coming to universalization of the human rights. On 10th of December 1948, the United Nations adopted Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The first article to that document has said that everybody is born free with dignity and rights. So when we are talking about the dignified right to life, prior to that, survival is the first question. If I survive, then only I will have the right to life. Let us first survive. Let us help others who are struggling for survival so that they can come to the plane of equality in the Indian context, and they have uplifted their position of survival to the life and enjoy a dignity and enjoy equality, enjoy social justice, enjoy economic justice. It is provided in our constitution and also the mandates of all international scenario. Now, coming to the second article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it provides that nobody should be discriminated based on caste, creed, gender, place of birth. That is a universally declared human right. Discrimination must be phased out. There should not be any kind of discrimination based on caste, creed, gender, pleasure, or whatever it might be. Bringing that philosophy into the Indian Constitution, Indian Constitution has also provided number of provisions which also provides for protection against discrimination. If we go to Article 14, it speaks about that equality before law and equal protection of the laws. It is citizens as well as aliens of the country. They are entitled to be treated equally before law, and they must get equal protection. That is the universal brotherhood. That is the humanity, humanism we have to maintain. In addition to that, when we are discussing about international instruments or documents, one may put a question to, is there any provision in our constitution that makes us binding on those international documents? The answer is yes. Article 51 of the Constitution, more specifically Article 51C of the Constitution, it mandates that as a member state of the United Nations or as a state, autonomous state, India, it has to respect the international treaties, documents, covenants, and conventions. And that is our international obligation. Then to substantiate it into constitutional mandate and constitutional provisions or the legal provisions, I like to draw the attention of the learned participants to Article 253 of the Constitution. That means the parliamentary power, legislative power under that article provides that the international treaties and documents, when we have signed and ratified, it becomes a bounden duty on the parliament to incorporate those objectives into the national legal system. I'm giving an example. In 1948, 10th of December, India as a member state of the United Nations has accepted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There are 38 human rights which have been universally declared to be of importance. Not only the legal rights of the Constitution, but they are termed as human rights. It is much, much higher than today legal and constitutional domain. But while we are trying to understand it, if we do not understand the significance of the objectives, then we are missing certain important points for interpretation of our laws and the Constitution and also the international laws. Now, to Article 253. Say, for example, after 1948, only, of course, we took more than 40 years to realize and bring the Protection of Human Rights Act in 1993. How much expeditious we are in adopting those international principles, incorporating into the legislation of the national domain. And that way, many other instances are there. Say, for example, in the cases of armed conflicts, 4 of the Geneva Conventions of 1949 were ratified. And in 1960, by the Geneva Convention Act that was passed by the Parliament, we have brought in those principles of armed conflict, how to deal with armed conflicts, what should be the role of the warring groups, armed struggles, or the state defense policies. It is already there in that enactment. Now coming to the Article 5 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It provides that nobody should be subjected to cruelty, inhuman and degrading treatment. But the hard reality in India for the last 6 decades at least for the 6 decades I have been experiencing, because I'm a down-to-earth person. I go to every section of people, interact with them, try to realize their hopes and aspirations. Yes, one thing is correct, that I am, as an individual, I'm not in a position to do anything. I must admit, that is my limitation. But then at least my sense of belongingness is still there with them. Now, when we're talking about the no cruelty, there should not be any cruelty and inhuman and degrading treatment. Then in that case, it is a mandate of the law. We have already adapted into our system, but then in reality, we ignore it. We ignore the sufferings of those people who really need protection against cruelty, inhuman, degrading treatment. Second important aspect is that Article 11 of that declaration provides that unless a person is declared to be involved in a crime and impose penalty, the presumption of innocency should be the order. That means a person may be accused of an offense, he is a criminal, he is taken into custody, but inhuman treatment should not be meted to him. He should be given the opportunity of defending him. I'd like to mention about the Kasaba, the Abjal Guru, 2 instances. There are more other instances wherein they were given the fair trial. They were given the opportunity of defending them. And the process continued. And ultimately, when they were found to be guilty by the competent court and confirmed by the Supreme Court, they were imposed death penalty. That is the procedurality. We cannot dispense with. We cannot go for extrajudicial killing of those human beings. He may be criminal, no doubt. He should be tried. And once the competent court declares that, yes, he is involved with the crime and evidence have established that he is the guilty person, and the competent court will impose the penalty. That is the procedure. But in most of the cases in our country, we are finding that there are violations. Supreme Court was very much critical about most of the cases. And very recently also, the misuse of Section 124A, sedition. Of course, the finality is not coming, but then Supreme Court is thinking about that should this imperialistic provision, after we have obtained independence and continued our constitution working for 70 years, should this law continue? So there will be discussions, judicial interpretations, and finally will arrive at. But then at least it is striking in the mind of honorable judges of the Supreme Court that this is not good. Innumerable instances are there, and that is why this is very much serious about it. Now coming to the right to self-determination. It has different components, but I'll be dealing with economic and social point of view. In 1966, 2 of the covenants, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, these are said to be first generation human rights. International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, these are said to be the second generation of human rights. These were adopted, and India has, of course, with limited reservation, has ratified it. Now, Article 1, common to both these covenants, speaks about right to self-determination of the peoples of the nationalities. The reason being, to be an independent person, that 5 important components of completeness of personality: civil, political, economic, social, cultural. If these are integrated together, then only we can say that personality has got full entity. And that was the objective with which these international documents were adopted. And India has also adopted those principles. But in practice, what is going on? In 2007, right of the Declaration of Right of the Indigenous People that was adopted by United Nations, and primarily to protect the interests of the indigenous people belonging to different countries. The indigenous people are the vulnerable people. Their rights are vulnerable. Most of them are vulnerable. And that is why the particular declaration has mandated upon the member states that they will have to give safeguard protection to their interests. One important thing, along with the indigenous people, the intellectual property rights, sui generis, or any other rights, including the plant varieties, including the biodiversity, including other technocratic ideas, innovative ideas, they are developing, and these are to be well protected. Now the intellectual property right has gone to the international domain, and the competition became international. It may be on vegetables, it may be on fruits, it may be on any other agricultural products, it may be on any medicinal plants. The growers who have been by generation and generation, they are producing it, they have got that right. And that is the intellectual right, sui generis, or geographical indication, or the copyright. And this is the time that we will have to go to those areas where this vulnerable section of people are living. And in most of the cases, what we find, that taking advantage of their innocence and ignorance of their basic rights and the protection and also the appropriate authority to whom they have to approach, many of the piracies are continuing. And as a result of which, ultimately, the process will go to extinction, and these people, along with their intellectual property rights, will be in the verge of extinction. They are already in the verge of extinction, and they will be extinct nationalities of any territory of the world. And that is why this is also a very serious issue we have to look into. And if we are not paying attention to that very carefully, then in that case, time is very near that we are dooming and we are destroying ourselves. And that is why what I feel for the last, starting about experiencing about 66 years of my life, and also studying about the working of the Constitution for 7 decades, and also studying about the history, culture, and also heritage of India, Indian population, I really feel that still we'll have to generate the sense of belongingness, that we'll have to feel that those have-nots who are also our brothers and sisters and co-citizens, when we claim that I am a citizen of the country, I personally believe that a person, an individual can, after having in his conduct the sense of belonging, the sense of rationality, and sense of justice, once they are adopting into their conduct and externalize in their behavior in the real sense of the term, then only a person can be said to be a citizen. Merely because I have obtained my citizenship by birth is only a theoretical consolation. What I feel is that if I want to claim to be a citizen, I am an individual, I will have to inculcate that spirit of sense of belonging, sense of rationality, and sense of justice. And after imbibing into my conduct, in my behavior, it must have been externalized. Then only I am qualified to be a citizen of the country. And only the Constitution is saying that mandate in the preamble is saying that it is the citizens. It is the citizens. And that is why I think that there must be a distinction between individual and a citizen. So whatever that might be, if we go on talking about human rights, it is endless. But then in a nutshell, what I have acquired the experience and idea about, that these are the issues which we will have to study very appropriately, and we will have to make different types of academic campaigns, academic discussions, and also going down to those people who are really striving for survival. Then I think we can get their mind, we can get their feelings, we can get their hopes, aspirations, and harmonize with the provisions of the Constitution, harmonize with international human rights perspective. Then only we can think about a better future India. Otherwise, for last 70 years, we have got a bitter experience that even if the judiciary is giving direction, but then in the process of implementation, as because another, the disaster monster, that is the corruption. Corruption has percolated down even to the lowest strata of human institution, and how to gradually phase out corruption. There are different types of laws, and we have to go through that. This is another hindrance, and another thing is that the fascination of science and technology, we should try to harmonize between the greed and the need. Then I think the human right will have definitely a value, and at least in a very short span of time, we'll be, with our endeavor and effort, we'll be in a position to receive or arrive at the first goal of Indian Constitution, the goal of equality. And once we acquire the goal of equality with all upliftment, social, economic, political, removing those ostracizations, and also uplifting their social, economic, political conditions, then only we can think about going for another objective of the Constitution. Constitution is dynamic, society is dynamic, so we'll have to have dynamic approach to that. And I think our generation is obligated that we have to discharge our functioning in such a way, we have to work in such a way that we achieve the goal of equality very soon, and thereafter let us decide in a democratic way what will be our next goal. And that way we can go on changing our goals and advancing, developing, and protecting the environment, protecting the human being, enjoy the human civilization in that way. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk, and I will interact if questions are there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your very thought-provoking as well as raising the burning issues of the society and also explaining the various articles of the Constitution of India related to human rights issues. Sir, we have just 3 minutes left with us to end this session. So I would like to request the participants if they have any queries or any view, so they can express it.
I have one small question.